Hey everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to transform an old kitchen island or peninsula front into a new one. Like this. Plus, we're adding a power outlet. So let's get started on modern builds. So I've already done a little bit of work on this peninsula to prep everything. Down at the base of the cabinet, I had power coming up to the floor and then through to another light fixture that we've already rearranged to go on another switch. And I'll use these wires to put a plug right here.
I cut a hole for a single gang outlet box with a drywall handsaw. And I want to say, I should have cut this with a little bit tighter margins from side to side. I used the wire feeding from the attic to pull up the one coming through the floor. And for this type of remodel work, you'll want an old work box.
And it's got these flaps that grab the drywall.
A new work electrical box would connect to the 2x4 studs with nails. But these, like I said, connect by pinching or clamping the drywall. I marked the wire coming up through the floor red because that's our hot wire, and then I capped the other one because it will stay in place.
I also want to add an outlet down at the end of the peninsula in case anybody wants to use an appliance or charge their phone down here. I'm going to use MC cable inside of this cabinet so that it's shielded and there's no risk of damage or shock inside of these boxes. Plus it's just up to code and looks cleaner.
All you have to do is bend this wire where you want the shielding to break, then you twist it to open it up a little so you can get some snips in and cut it. And this shot's a little bit blurry, my bad, but at least you can see how it's feeding in through the wall.
Got it.
Wiring an outlet isn't the most difficult thing out there, but make sure you only do it if you're comfortable doing it and you know that you're not making any mistakes. As a basic rule of thumb though, your black wires will connect to your gold screw and your white wires to the silver one, and then obviously ground to green. And these fancy outlets have a cool cover to them, that way you don't see any screws.
Nailed it.
I repeated the same steps as earlier to cut my wire to length, but I did also remove about 12 inches of shielding. That's what's gonna come through the electrical box.
Okay, I want to be 5 1/8 off of the edge, and that'll be the center of my box.
This time I marked and cut the electrical box hole with tighter margins, and I used a plunge blade on the oscillating multi-tool. The back of this cabinet is somewhere between 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch MDF, and this tool worked great for the job. I believe this is a 5/8 inch spade bit that I'm using to drill through the cabinet walls. That way the conduit and wire can feed into that box. And I did make sure to anchor this down. And I'll be picking up some specialty conduit clamps for inside of the cabinet. You can see those on the screen now, and I'll make sure and leave links down below to all the tools, materials, and supplies for this project in the description. I won't be wiring this outlet until our final step after our paneling is on, so let's keep moving.
My next step is going to be adding a plywood front to the cabinets, but first I need to add some bracing to make sure everything is supported and square.
I just cut 3 straight 2x4s to length, and I used my speed square to make sure that I got good 90-degree cuts. There should be plenty of bracing between the wall and cabinets.
And what's super convenient is the back of this cabinet is flush with the inside face of this wall. So I'm going to add a 2x4 brace at the bottom, on the top, and in the middle. This will get screwed into the 2x4 studs behind the wall and then through the side of the cabinet to make sure this is really sturdy. Okay, bracing is complete and super sturdy. Now I'm gonna head out to the shop and I'm gonna cut down a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to the same size as the front of this peninsula. I'm not worrying about a straight edge. I want this to float off of the floor about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. I also made a cutout for the electrical box in the corresponding location on this plywood. I made a pilot hole with my spade bit so that I could get the jigsaw in there to create this cutout.
When I moved this piece of plywood into the kitchen, I was happy to see that it fit underneath the countertops really snug, and I used a chisel on one side to prop it up, basically as a shim. Then I used a screw so I could lift up the other side and shim it up. And I'm using 1 inch long 18 gauge brad nails to connect these pieces together. I've got about 1.5 inches of material, so I could have probably gotten away with 1.25 inch nails, but I didn't have them on me. But I'm not really relying on those nails for strength anyways. I sunk some screws in for that.
And now we're on to an exciting part. I'm gonna unbox the felt and wood slat panels that I got for the front of these cabinets. I sure hope nothing got damaged in shipping. We're gonna find out though.
I was super happy to see that I had no veneer damage.
These look awesome.
The wood is a real natural oak veneer, but it is over MDF with a 1/4 inch felt. We're gonna get these out of the plastic,
But first, I want to give a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring today's episode. If you need a website, online store, or just a custom domain, Squarespace is your one-stop shop, and the best part is you need zero website building experience. With Squarespace's Blueprint AI and their built-in search engine optimization, creating a custom-tailored website has never been easier. Blueprint AI basically guides you through the whole process, creating that custom site. And the enhanced search engine optimization tools help you get seen more often. Squarespace online stores are super powerful, there's no limits to the number of products you can sell, and online you've got all kinds of payment options. Customers can pay with credit cards, PayPal, even Apple Pay. And in eligible countries, customers can buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. And lastly, if you're somebody that wants to create online courses, Squarespace has everything you need in one place. With Squarespace's tools, you can build that course, set your paywall, and decide whether that's a one-time payment or a recurring subscription charge. Basically, with Squarespace, you can take your knowledge and turn it into income. So to learn more, make sure and follow my link in the description, squarespace.com/modernbuilds. There you can build out your entire Squarespace site before entering any of your credit card info. And then when it is time to make your site live, don't forget to use my code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site, store, or domain through Squarespace. Now let's finish this peninsula.
I want to be clear that I wasn't surprised these panels have an MDF core. I saw that on the Amazon listing. And it's interesting how each board is stapled through the back of the felt every 8 inches or so. From all of the lessons I've learned about circular saws is you do not want to get fabric tangled up in them, but it said it was okay in the directions to use that to cut the panels to length. And you can see me using my speed square again as a 90-degree guide.
I am really happy because that cut super clean, no tear out, and the felt didn't grab or mess with the blade at all. All right, now let's do a quick test fit to make sure this is gonna look good. And that's perfect. You can see just about a 1/16, maybe an 1/8 inch gap, a little bit less.
I noticed some smudging transferring from my circular saw onto the wood, so I used mineral spirits to clean that up, and then I started making repeated cuts on my panels. I'm gonna need 7 of these in total, and I got 2 out of each of my long pieces. I've got long offcuts with this project, but they're not going to waste. I'm gonna use these scrap pieces in a future project, so don't worry, we're all good. And I should note, you don't want to cut fast. This is the actual speed I was cutting. A lot of this other footage is sped up a little bit. And final note, I have a finished blade on my circular saw that's a high tooth count blade rather than a construction blade that cuts fast. This cuts clean, as you can see. I measured in from the top edge and the side of my panel for the electrical box, and I cut that out again with my jigsaw. And you can see how it lines up perfectly in the middle of my slats. That is super pro. Next, I'm gonna flip the panel over and I'll use a new blade in my utility knife to cut a little bit of the felt off of the right edge of my panel. This will all get trimmed out, you'll see in a second.
Now fingers crossed, all of this lined up. All right, so far, outlet looks perfect. And this is the same material. I'm gonna cut a piece of trim to cover this visible plywood and felt, but I'm gonna use it as a gauge to bring out the edge of my panel.
And this time through, I'm using 2-inch long brad nails.
That's one down, let's keep moving.
The panels butt up edge to edge. On the left side, there's a felt line exposed, and on the right, the wood and felt are flush. That way it's a seamless, continuous look. In other installation videos, I've seen people use drywall screws through the felt and into their substrate, but I like the idea of using the brad nails instead. I think using any color screw on this color felt will be super noticeable. When I started, I had no idea where the last panel would land, and I ended up having this little strip of wood that's a cutoff that I need to keep track of. Right now, we've got all of our full panels in place, and I used a hot glue gun to attach that little cutoff that I mentioned a second ago. And it's cut just a little bit shorter, that's room for baseboard trim. In total, I had 60 brad nail holes to fill with wood putty, then I sanded everything with 220 grit and prep for finish, which I'm using Maker Brand Simple Finish. This is an oil-based finish, and it's gonna give me a little bit more color and richness in the wood tone than a water-based finish would. And that's a good thing because it'll help match the other kitchen cabinets, which also have an oil-based finish, although it's polyurethane. I just applied a pretty decent coat, let that soak into the wood for 10 or 15 minutes, then wiped away all of the excess. And as I worked, I kept reapplying and going over slats that really soaked in that oil. That helps give a good, consistent sheen rather than letting it dry on the surface. And check out that color match. Awesome. And now we need to address this visible plywood and felt.
This is the same material as the toe kick on the base of the cabinets, and I'll cut this to size as a little trim piece that should work great.
This ended up blending even better than I expected. I'm really happy with the results that I got, and I used a little quarter round style trim on the bottom between the floors and the cabinet. And I made sure my nail punch and wood putty was close by. On the other side of the Peninsula, I installed a couple pieces of baseboard trim just to show you what to do in case you have a situation similar to this in an install. After adding color-changing white putty to the nail holes, I then used white paintable caulk to finish out all of the trim before adding a little bit more paint. These pieces were pre-painted with 2 coats. I am happy to report we are officially on the final step of this entire project. Installing this electrical box was really similar to the last one, but I did add a longer screw to the little flap. That way it was able to connect through this thicker material. But wiring this outlet was even easier than the last because I only had one black, white, and ground screw to worry about. And I would note, it's a good idea to center the outlet on a slat. It just takes a little bit of prep work, but it does make everything look super clean.
Let's go, that is killer.
And we are done. But before we show everything off, let's go to the before shots to remind ourselves of where we started. In the background, you can see the kitchen has come a long way, but don't worry about that for now. Let's just worry about the front of the kitchen peninsula. It needed a lot of love, but now let's check out these afters. I am even happier than I expected to be with the completion of this project. It really ties the whole space together, pushing it in a slightly more modern direction than it was before this project was started. My margins everywhere were basically perfect. All of my edges were super flush. I am really happy with the quality of work that I was able to complete here. Big upgrade.
Even though these felt and wood panels aren't cheap, I am very happy with the quality and consistency, plus the felt itself is really thick. It's veneer over MDF like y'all already know. That's definitely not a positive, but I did get a great tone match between the kitchen cabinets and this paneling with a coat of simple finish. So I am gonna give it 5 stars. This kitchen has come a long way and the full renovation video will be coming out very soon. I'll leave a link to that down below once it's live. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Make sure and hit that like button and subscribe with the notification bell. And we'll see you next time on Mike's First Flip.
It's Mike's First Flip.